Hello and welcome here. We're here at the Teagasc tent with dairy specialist with Teagasc, Patrick Gowing. Patrick, we have in front of us here a lovely farm model. Patrick's going to be talking to us about a bit about the year, how it went. Been a tough year for farmers. Grazing has been tough, Patrick. And look, just talk us a bit about how you felt the year as well. And obviously, you're a local dairy farmer here. We've all seen it. It's been tight. How has farmers been coping throughout the year?
Thanks. Yeah, I suppose, look, as you say, it's a tough year. And I think you nearly have to go back into last year. So, last year was a tough year. So, we had 2022, obviously the record year. Costs went up about 34% in 2022 from the war in 2021. And that cost structure maintained into 2023. But obviously, the milk price dropped down. So, we had that impact on farms. So, new cost structure, lower milk price. And that was obviously in any year, the weather makes everything was complicated with a bad year. So we had a very wet year from July all the way through to spring. So while this spring was bad, it was amplified by having a bad spring the year previous. And I suppose it's a tale of two stories. Then we're actually across the country now. The farm it's gone dry, so we're back on annual growth across the country on pasture base by about a tonne. Just it's a cooler year, and then we're also seeing a split within the country as well. So this part of the country, and down to Kilkenny, Carlow, dry, very dry, feeding from a drought point of view. And if you go west there, they got a lot of wet weather and also feeding as well. So it's probably a year of extra feeding.
Yes.
And consistent feeding because we just weren't able to go to grass because of weather.
Yeah. And look, Patrick, you talked about cost there. And look, obviously a lot of lads were buffer feeding silage, which was not the ideal this year. But like you talked about before, the costs. So when you're feeding meal, you talk about the trends in production. The last couple of years, we've seen farmers trying to get a response in milk off meal. But it shows that feeding grass is the way forward, and that's the only way you're going to really see margins. Yep.
Yeah, so look, we did analysis just to see that. So we went through profit monitor data from our dairy discussion groups. Yeah. It was about 720 people, and we went down through it, and we just ranked them on profit per cow. So the top 10%, bottom 10%, just see what was the difference. So what's cause and profit on dairy farms, and we're using 2023 data. And when we looked into that, there was two main things that came out. Half the difference, so the difference between the top and the bottom was about €1,100. So the top farmer making 1,100 more than the bottom farmer in the data set. And half the difference was gross output, so they had a higher gross output, so basically sold more. And the other half was on cost control, so there's two parts of it there. And actually, if we dive into the gross output, and you're talking about the response to meal, the extra output didn't come from extra meal. So if we look at the top 10% and the bottom 10%, they actually fed the exact same amount of meal. So it was about 1.1 tonne of dry matter. So the extra output came from a higher milk price, getting better fats and proteins, which is great to see from all the work we're doing with our EBIs and breeding coming along the line. But also, it was actually, when we looked at it, they put about 300 to 400 kilos of dry matter extra grass to their cows. And that's equating to about 1.5 kilos extra dry matter per day. Yeah. So if we want to go forward and look at the more profitable one, it's not actually how much meal you feed, it's how much grass can you get through your own cows. Yeah. And that was driving half it. And the other half then, it said it was in cost control. And what we're seeing in costs is a massive variance in costs. And maybe potentially, so if you look at back 18, drought year 19, 20, 21, every year was a little bit better than the rest. And then 22 went very well. And maybe we took our eye off the ball with it in cost control. So we're seeing a massive range in what people are spending to do. Take veterinary, for example. The average costs you about €89 per cow. But the range is from 50 to 150 euro. Yes, yeah. So there's scope there for people to have a look at their
huge variation, Patrick, yeah. And so look, when we're on the topic of cost, look, we have in front of us here the kind of ideal layout, one could say, for a kind of, in terms of slurry capacity, slurry storage, water quality. Do you want to talk us through it here, Patrick?
Yeah, thanks. So I suppose what we want to just demonstrate, I suppose, is best practice. So what we be saying is best practice solves all problems. So if we design our yards right, it'll be more efficient from a labour point of view, better from a cow flow point of view, better to expand it again going forward. And also, if you get all them things right, it'll improve the water quality in the farmyard because you're controlling a lot of these things. So a couple of things here, so we have the cubicle shed here, and you can see there's a slatted tank there. So we have full control at the cows. So the cows will be emptied down the shed and across the slats into the milking parlour. And you can see whenever the cows are in the yard, we have full control by the nature of that slatted tank of the movement across the yard. Yeah. We're also situated the milking parlour beside the cubicle shed to minimise the movement, so we're not moving across yards and through yards. The other thing then is we have the cow flow set up in a way that the cows can come straight in and straight back to grass on the roadway. Yeah. The other thing we looked at there is there's three main movements in any farmyard, and what you want to do is to have them together but not crossing over. So in this example, the cows can come in to milk and return. The tractors can be working over in this section here, and the milk lorry can come in. So the three main movements in the farmyard, side by side, but not crossing over.
Okay.
A couple other things, obviously, we have the tower here just to represent the need for extra slurry storage. So it's a key question. If you do you have enough slurry storage? If you don't, maybe you should consider putting it on. And slurry actually is going to be very important coming forward as we reduce our chemical nitrogen. The value of the nitrogen in our slurry becomes more important to grow grass. We also, the cows will be calved in this section of the farm. We have the calving shed directly opposite to minimise the movements there. Covered dung stead and silage, 2 silage pits to show maybe should we have a second pit for quality and another one for bulk tank. And the other thing, main thing, what we like from a design point of view is what we call expansion lines. So in a well-designed yard, if this was to get bigger, so if this farmer had the opportunity to expand, the milking parlour would move back, the cubicle shed would move back, but the flow of the yard doesn't change. And you'd often see as people expand, next thing there's a shed put in the wrong place, and then you're back to moving cows through yard. So it's designed for all them things in together.
100%. And look, Patrick, I suppose this is all well and good, you know, having this design, but I suppose next year, you know, there's uncertainty around the derogation, where we're going to be going. So, like, our lads, should they be investing now? Is it something that you think farmers should be considering they don't know how many cows they're going to be milking next year, which is
yeah, look, obviously with the derogation there's a lot of uncertainty, and it's a fair question for a farmer to ask. Like, it's a very obvious one: how many cows will we milk in a couple of years' time? And hopefully, and that's the big thing, that we do retain the derogation. And it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing there. Like, unless we improve the water quality, we won't have the derogation. So part of that would be having enough slurry storage to make sure we put the slurry out at the right times. That'll have a massive impact from water quality point of view. The other thing is what we were saying with the slurry storage, I already said, is by putting the slurry out at the right time, we'll get better use of the nutrient in it, and that's going to be very important to grow the grass as well. So there's a couple of things like that. And I suppose the key question is, have you enough slurry storage at the moment? And if you don't, you probably need to invest. There's a lot of options out there that you can do it, and there's also very good tax write-offs there, so it mightn't be actually as dear as you think for a farmer to do. I would suggest for any farmer looking to make any sort of, maybe to contact your local Teagasc office, do a business plan, look at the figures, set it up and see. If you're unsure and you're going to bide your time, that's fair enough. Then you will have to look at different options, and maybe the start time, the amount you need mightn't be a whole pile more. So it should be looked at least anyway.
Yes, 100%. Look, that's a lot, Patrick. Thanks very much for your time.